This is your session on the future of investment and energy and development in the Middle East. Let me start with Lloyd. You can go anywhere you want in the world in terms of offices and clients and investments. And when you think about the Middle East in the context of both the volatility but also some of the extraordinary changes that are planned by these governments on the ground, including perhaps most significantly and most dramatically the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. How do you think? How do you think for yourself and your bank? How do you think for your clients?
Well, I think historically, firms like ours were going there to effectively take capital out of the country, invest it outside the region, because that's where the growth was and that was where the demand for capital was. I'd say one of the big changes, and certainly some of the changes that are being driven by Vision 2030 and obviously in other countries around the region, is that there's actually a lot of growth and a lot of investment being done in country. Part of that is the energy and the opportunities presented by the population, and some of it is compelled by anxiety about how to put the population to work and how to take account of the demographic fact that there's going to be so many people, looking for jobs, and so that a lot of the countries in the region want to invest in their own countries, and not just to be passive investors, but to actually invest in manufacturing and other industries that will produce jobs, which is going to be a necessity in the decades ahead.
And so, I mean, when you are considering Saudi Arabia as a focus because of that transition, what are the headlines, what are the metrics you really want to see over the next coming years that are going to make you double down?
I'd say realistically today, still for financial institutions, it's still a net exporter of capital, and so we're still going in, but it's becoming increasingly clear to us. And I would, and if I were influential in that country and had shared those concerns, I'd want to make sure that the people who were doing investing for us were also doing things for us that would increase job creation in the country, that would bring new industries, that would help diversify the economy, which is an absolute necessity. I'd say the facts that are occurring here, there are two major themes that are causing great changes, which is the restructuring of the energy market, petroleum, and that's a price thing, but it's something that's affecting both the demand side and the supply side. And then apart from energy, is the compulsion of the demographic situation. And so I'd say a lot of it has been portfolio investing, and now I think the region needs the commitment and the help in getting investment done in furthering industries and creating jobs in the region. So real investment in the country.
So one more quick one for you before I turn to Yasir, which is, okay, you talked about urgency given demographics, urgency given energy. As we know, deep pockets in a lot of these countries, like Saudi Arabia. We've heard about the end of oil for a very long time. How urgent is this? Counterfactually, why can't they wait for 5 years, for 10 years, take a more incremental approach at this time, given the level of resilience that historically these countries have exhibited?
Look, for when I read about Vision 2030, you listen to the Deputy Crown Prince, the Crown Prince, Crown Prince, the sudden elevations leave us at sea. When you hear about what he has to say, I think there's a recognition of the need to do it, tempered by the necessity of going slow, so that what you want to have produce more stability in the long run doesn't produce instability in the short run. That's my wording and my assessment. But I think if you could push a button, which you can't, that button would be pushed because it's there now. I mean, some of these reforms that occur generate the demand. It's kind of a bootstrap. You'd like to elevate everything at once, but a reform is going to be to educate the population, make jobs available to women that weren't available to before, have more university graduates. As the universities release these graduates, they're not, there's going to be clamor, demand, pressure for them to put their education to work, and that creates a lot of social pressure. And of course, I shouldn't be the one to explain, but I think everybody's aware that there's a lot of social forces that are trying to push back change. And this is a huge challenge for the country, and it has great implications for the world. And I think everybody outside of the region should be doing the best they can to encourage it, because the ramifications and the consequences of failure are not just going to be within the region.
So Yasir, having heard what Lloyd just said, you stand at the helm of a critical dimension of Vision 2030 and the extent to which this most important country in the region is changing itself.
Yeah.
How do you feel that mandate? What are your priorities? What in 5 years' time, if we come back and say this guy made it happen, how different does Saudi Arabia look?
It's really different than before. To start with, the Vision 2030 as an initial thing is a good start, because now we have like targets. We have targets for the medium term, and we have targets for the long term. Medium term, we have the NTP, the National Transformation Plan, and this is 2020. And we have the Vision 2030. And in the vision, we have 543 different initiatives with about 376 KPIs, key performance indicators. So it's not only about the vision, which is really a very complicated part, but also the execution of these initiatives and to monitor these initiatives. So we have everybody in the government from different ministers looking at their own initiatives with their own KPIs. And we have the CEDA, the so-called CEDA, Council for Economic and Development Affairs, which is chaired by the Crown Prince, Ahmed bin Salman. Is meeting in a weekly basis, looking at these initiatives and the key performance indicators. Now, going back to PIF, Public Investment Fund, which is managed by me and chaired by the Crown Prince himself, and we have another maybe 7 ministers, is a main enabler for the Vision 2030. So we have a lot of these initiatives will be part of the PIF program, and that's one of the programs in the NTP and the Vision 2030. So in 5 years' time, I would say we have changed our strategy. So the PIF was established in 1971, and it was a totally different mandate. So the mandate for PIF was like public development and stuff like that, like creating jobs only with subsidies and going into projects in the infrastructure and otherwise, but mainly it's for developmental purposes without looking at the commercial side of it. Now, the difference in here is we have different vision and mission for PIF. Now we're looking at things differently. It has to make commercial sense, in addition to the developmental aspect. But it has to be efficient, because if it's not efficient, it's not going to work out.
Right.
So it's better, instead of just throwing money at different projects, we want to make sure that these projects are well. Now we have 6 different pools of investments, and these pools of investments, one of which is the sector development. In sector development, we have too many sectors in Saudi are underdeveloped. I'll give you an example. The waste management, the entertainment, we're really below par, and now we're coming in to develop these kind of sectors. And I think if you want to go after 5 years and see have we done well or not, one of the pools of investments, which is sector development, is looking at these different companies that we're establishing, and if these companies did well and it's better than the governmental performance, let's say in a commercial aspect.
So when you look at some of the challenges, right? I mean, I hear you say entertainment is underdeveloped in the kingdom, and as someone who travels to the kingdom, I would agree with that, right?
Well, and culture, generally.
Right.
Yeah, it's culture and entertainment. It's both.
So I'd want to, but sports, on the other hand, is something as well, underdeveloped, but you could see a lot of interest right now in sports developing more in the kingdom. I think there's been a lot of effort there.
Yeah.
Would you say that, to what extent do you think the principal challenges that you have to really address, to what extent are they about just attracting money, getting the business right? To what extent are they about culture and about just internal challenges that are unique to the Saudi system of governance and being? And to what extent are they about ensuring that you have the government officials and the family all aligned, as opposed to resistance against that kind of reform in the kingdom? Could you kind of take us through how you think about those?
I mean, we've been working in the Vision 2030 for quite some time, more than 18 months in the making preparation, and then another 6 months to announce it. So, of course, you would have some resistance to change here and there, but that's what the Crown Prince did. He brought everybody in. I mean, initially, most of the ideas were like, a no-no from everybody.
Yep.
Then we started getting more and more believers, and that's what you need. So now we have more believers in. So if you look at the Vision 2030 and what it has, it looks at all the spectrum of the economy and society in Saudi Arabia. Women working, employment, that's one of the things that we're looking at. The quality of life of Saudis, we want to increase it. We want to put some of the cities in Saudi Arabia in the scale of the best cities to live in the world. So all of these kind of things needs some kind of investments and needs some kind of governmental spending into the recreation, entertainment. And now we announced one of the mega projects in Riyadh, the entertainment hub of Riyadh, Al-Qiddiya, which is in the outskirts of Riyadh, or we call the Project H, because Riyadh topography is really beautiful. It's about 700 meters above the sea level. Then you have a cliff. And we have a great project there for the entertainment right at the cliff. We're going to have theaters, we're going to have golf courses, sports arenas, like shopping malls, residential areas, and this is going to cater for the people in Riyadh and the towns around Riyadh. So yeah, we're of course, we had some resistance initially, but now more and more people coming on board because we are not only talking the talk, but we're walking it too.
So, from Goldman Sachs, you hear the Saudis, lots of juicy investment projects, want to engage an organization, a company like your own. They're also looking east. They're looking increasingly at places like China. When the Chinese invest, it's not just a bank, but it's also a lot of state infrastructure around it. When Goldman invests, arguably the US government is not necessarily alongside. How do you think about Goldman's competitive angle when you want to get involved with governments in big projects in different parts of the world?
Well, of course, there are advantages to bring and disadvantages when you're government backed. Of course, we bring, if you have a good track record for investing capital wisely, when you invest your own capital, other people follow you. So it's not, I remember there was sometimes money is just money and sometimes it's more than just money, because with certain investments come a valuable validation that then brings other money. And then, we like to think in some ways we carry that. I was going to say, apart from there are models and precedent for what they do. One of the things is that there are competitors in the region that have done quite well. Now, I'll get to the point also of the different, you're getting at different cultures and different, uniquely Saudi institutions that maybe other people have gotten through. But in terms of ADIA and Abu Dhabi, and let me go further. Let's talk about, mention Singapore. These were all countries that have developed massively, and the but-for cause of their development and their rapid development was their great use of targeted investments by sovereign wealth funds, all of which were charged to maximizing their income, but they had a lot of collateral benefits to the country, and anybody who received those investments understood that too. And so they used that to develop, to be, in a way, the catalyst for forming industries around, make sure, because not all investment is investment, just like all dollars are, some dollars are better than other dollars, depending on who's providing it. So you can get that done. The challenge is there, aside from the lesson that you get from knowing that other people have done it, is you can look at the lessons and do a kind of a gap analysis. What do they have? What advantages do they have? What problems do they have? One of the things if you want to grow the economy and meet these objectives is you're going to have industries in which you're not going to have a lot of local talent yet, and you're going to have to import people to live there, and so you're going to have to put them up and make it attractive for them and their families to live in that town. And when you look and you see what Dubai did and Abu Dhabi did and Singapore did, they made it very attractive from an economic point of view, but from a social point of view, and places to go. And these are what I meant by challenges that have to get there. And the problem with everything that has to be done to get there is you kind of need to do everything at the same time. And it's a huge challenge, but things like this get done. But that's the challenge. But there are models. There are models for the programs.
So that Lloyd's point makes me think of a question for you, which is that to the extent that you are a one-stop shop, right? It's not divided in Saudi Arabia like it is in the Emirates. And so, you are able to work with the government in determining what the priorities are for long-term investment. To what extent are you thinking as you deploy these investments, look, I'm about growth. I want to make a return.
Absolutely.
And to what extent is it about, no, we're also focusing on jobs.
Yeah.
We're focusing on, sort of infrastructure. We're focusing on education. In other words, as you're thinking about strategic partners working with you, what are you telling them that you're trying to accomplish as opposed to simply, I'm maximizing profitability?
So when the new board came in under the chairmanship of the Crown Prince, we looked at the strategy of PIF and we said, okay, what's the best way to do it? So the first thing we've done is a kind of diagnostic, what we've been doing in the past. And then the second point was a benchmark, what the others are doing, what the Emiratis are doing, Singaporean, Malaysians, the Norges Bank, all of them. And the third thing was, what is it exactly that we want to do after we know where have we been and what the others are doing? And we came to saying we should have the whole thing under one umbrella. We have an excellent board. It's chaired by the Crown Prince. We have 6 or 7 other ministers. So we have the enforcement power. It's the chairman. Our chairman is the chairman of the Council of Economic and Developmental Affairs. So all the things in the Vision 2030 is coming to us, and we have to be an enabler for the Vision 2030. So we have 6 different pools of investments. The first one, which is the international investments, and this international investments is talking about the diversity of our income. So we don't want to have all of our investment. If you look at the current asset allocation that we had, it was mainly in Saudi, more than 90% Saudi and less than 10% international. So we said we want to change this because this is highly correlated to the oil prices, and oil prices, as you know, can go up and down with a very high volatility. Oil prices up, we would be doing very well, down, not so as well. So we thought we need to go international, and in the international, we've done, going to asset managers and direct investments and different asset classes. Then the second pool of investment is the sector development, which I mentioned earlier. The third one is the giga projects. And the giga projects, I mentioned one of them is the Riyadh Entertainment Hub, the Al Qiddiya project. And there was another announcement in Red Sea, which is about 200 kilometers of coastline with a total of about 50 to 100 islands. One of the best seas in the world. We're going to develop it. It's going to be eco-friendly tourism, attracting people domestically and internationally. So then we have the real estate and infrastructure pool of investment. And with that, I'll give an example. In the Vision 2030, we said we want to increase the number of religious visitors to Mecca and Medina, the pilgrimage, to 30 million. And if you want to increase this number to 30 million, and current number is below 10,
Well, 8 now, right?
something like that.
Yeah.
So you need more infrastructure, you need more hotels, rooms, and trains and stuff like that. So this pool of investment is looking after the real estate and the infrastructure. Then the mega partnerships, what we have done with SoftBank, we raising the largest amount of money in the history of money raising, $100 billion, and we're committed for $45 billion of that, looking at the future investments and the next trends. Where should we go, like Internet of Things, robotics, life science, and some people would say, is this the best thing a sovereign wealth fund should do? My answer, yes, because most of our investments are conventional investments. Now it's time for us to move forward with the next thing. The other pool of investment is the treasury, just the regular treasury. So why did we choose to put all of these pools of investments under one sovereign fund? Because of the enforcement, because of the power of the chairman and the other ministers, and we can get things done a lot easier.
So then a quick follow-on, which is, you guys aren't new in that regard, and certainly the Saudis have tried lots of significant and relatively ambitious projects before on infrastructure, on finance, on education. When you look back at that over the past couple of decades, what would you say are the lessons that you need to learn from your own history that you need to now get right or get different? What happened before that you're saying, okay, that didn't work, now, but we've learned, here's where we're going?
Oh, I mean, if you look at the PIF or the government investments generally, not necessarily through PIF.
Absolutely.
I'll give an example, King Abdullah Financial District.
I remember.
CAFD.
Yep.
Started 2008, was supposedly to be delivered in 2012. Still, it's not open.
Right.
Because, and that's one of the things that we do. Now we have like an investment process. For any investment that we go to, we have like steps. What should we do and what we shouldn't be doing? So the King Abdullah Financial District, what went wrong? It's like one of the most beautiful projects, developments you can ever see anywhere in the world. About 64 beautiful building. It's like an architect's dream. Beautiful designs, everything is so good about it. Now, there's a problem. It was designed and master planned by those engineers. It wasn't looked at from the commercial sense, and that's where we come in. Okay, we like beautiful things and good things and development and what have you, but at the same time, it should make sense. If you look at the efficiency ratios that we have there, it's about 50% versus the efficiency ratio in the other buildings, which is between 75 to 85. So that means you have a lot of empty spaces that's not rentable, not leasable.
So was that the government not paying enough attention? Was that you didn't have enough good bureaucrats? There wasn't enough expertise? Was that the people in charge of the project just weren't the right people?
Maybe it's a combination of all the above, but I would say the process by itself was wrong. And it's not only King Abdullah Financial District got this wrong, but I can tell you, even in different jurisdictions, you have the same mistake, which is master planners coming in, put some really beautiful design, and then start implementing, and then it doesn't make sense.
And it's not just in the kingdom. I mean,
We've
seen this in other
and we've
parts.
seen it, in different parts of the world.
So
You don't create an industry by putting up the buildings. You have to create the demand, and you want
Exactly, yeah.
better that people should be doubling up on their cubby holes and clamoring for more space, and that you build the space and hope that people will come. It doesn't work that way. It should. You look at it, in other words, if I was setting a goal for myself or a challenge for myself, I would think that the Saudi Arabian economy is equal in size to the rest of the Gulf added up. So it should be a financial hub. It has the biggest reserves, again, bigger than everybody else's combined. But just because you have that accomplished doesn't mean you will be the hub. Otherwise, Singapore wouldn't have existed. It would have been Shanghai, or Germany would be, wouldn't be London. It would be Frankfurt, even without Brexit, because Germany is the biggest economy. So it's not necessarily rule of law, an attractive place to live, schools for expats. So what you have to do is you have to generate the demand for the space. If you build the space, that's not enough. So it's not an architecture, it's not an engineering feat. It's creating, it's a little bit, again, you have to do these things all at the same time, which is why it's a very difficult bootstrap. You have to create the culture of commerce that makes that an attractive place for a hub. Now, one of the great things is it's where the money is, and it's where the population is for the region. But there's no reason for Dubai geographically to have it. And if you turn back the clock 60 years ago, you wouldn't have had a clue that that would be the case. But they were very aggressive, commercial, and created a lot of incentives for people to aggregate there and really kind of stole it.
No, it's so interesting because you see countries that got it wrong can get it right. I mean, the same thing you're talking about with the financial district in Saudi Arabia. I mean, I remember the first time the Emiratis came to the New York Stock Exchange, they saw the floor and they said, oh, I want one of those. Just the idea, like, give me lots of screens, I want traders. Like, well, we don't really do it that way anymore, but no, I want one. And now, of course, we're saying the Emiratis are getting it right. Now, this is early stages for the kingdom, but, I mean, knowing what you know, and of all the countries you've been to, if you were saying, here are the things that I would be willing to bet on long term, these are the things that I think they're probably going to get it right, and these are things I still want to wait and see, what would you say?
You know, I think they have, you know, change in, I mean, you know, we'll have to see, but they certainly have a change in program and a burst of energy that comes from it, and a lot of relief among all the institutions that you talk to. And from my perspective in Saudi Arabia, are very eager to see success in the new program. So I'm sure there's internal dissent, but certainly there's a lot of people cheering on this new this new opportunity. That's an attractive thing. I think the difficulty is going to be there's nobody has done this without attracting a lot of expats and a lot of people. And by the way you attract it is you make it attractive, and you know something you beat on. And I'm not saying this is not necessarily the strategy of the PIF, but other people have and said, look, we're giving you a lot of money, we would like you to build it here. And we'd like you to have an exchange, and you know, we'll give you money, but we'd like you to be more resident, and we'd like you to do more stuff here, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and bring in more people, and then of course there's more activity, and people will say, gee, I have 4 offices in the Middle East, but let me see where they should be. Well, the Saudi economy is bigger than all the others added up. You know, if you kind of may want to have it there, but if you can't bring in people and they don't want, look, Saudi Arabia has done this in another context. Look at Aramco.
Aramco. Absolutely. World class.
World class. Expats come and go very freely. It's not an unattractive place for people to live. Maybe what you have to do is you have to build districts where, in other words, the compromise in trying to make it more of an attractive culture to attract these other at the same time that you haven't really cleared up all the cultural differences. Maybe you can create districts where there are certain behaviors are allowed and other places where they're not, and just create, so like a financial district, but a financial district with some real consequence.
Do you think that's politically and culturally possible in Saudi Arabia?
I mean, changes here. What we're trying to do is ecosystems, create whole ecosystems. Because, as you said, Lloyd, I mean, it's not only one thing. If you look at the financial capabilities of Saudi, it's really big, but at the same time, if people want to open up offices, they move elsewhere and they keep on going back and forth. So, of course, we need to have better quality of life. And that's one of the things that we've said in the Vision 2030, not only for foreigners, but for everybody. We need to have good schools, good healthcare, good recreations, entertainment, parks, transportation, everything. Of course, we need to have better ecosystems. So yes, I think these kind of things are there, and in we want to do it, and we are really vocal about it, and that's what we're saying in the Vision 2030. We want to get there. Now, you have the Aramco thing and the gated communities. That's one of the things that we already have in Saudi. Like, Aramco has been there since, what, the 30s, 40s, and it's the same thing. It's gated. King Abdullah Financial District could be gated. We don't know. We're still looking at it. The Red Sea project could be, I don't know, as an idea. So all of these things are on the table. We're looking at everything. We're looking what would make a project or an ecosystem successful one or not. What would attract people? If we want to build stuff, we need good lawyers, good bankers, good doctors, and if we don't have them in Saudi, we have to get them from outside. And the ecosystem, it should be more appealing. We need, better airport, better visa process, all of these kind of things we're looking at. And we want to attract more people. It's not only attracting the money, attracting good talents. And that's one of the things that what we said in the Vision 20.
So not too much time left, but I have one question, different question for each of you. I'll start with you, Yasir. I'm a political scientist, so I have to ask this, right? Trump's first trip outside the United States in the world is to Riyadh. And it's an extraordinary show, and it's lots of promise of better relationship. We're buddies now. It's talk about a lot more joint investment, closer defense cooperation, all the rest. Months later, does it matter? Does it help you? Does it make a difference?
I mean, the relationships between Saudi Arabia and the United States has been there since Roosevelt come and see King Abdulaziz. It had maybe some bit of volatility, but all in all, it's always been a good relationship. The president's first visit to Saudi Arabia meant a lot to us, and I think we are very much aligned. I mean, if you look at what we say in Vision 2030 and what the U.S. administration wants to do, which is have better jobs, more infrastructure. You see a lot of alignments. So I think things will continue and improving. We are now with the Blackstone in an infrastructure fund, and this fund is mainly investing in the U.S. So we're going to be investing a lot in the infrastructure, which is something that this country needs a lot because we haven't seen any infrastructure investments for a long time. So yes, I think we will continue on working in our investments. It's our preference of investments, even with the Vision Fund. I mean, SoftBank is a Japanese company, but if you look at the investments that we're doing through SoftBank, it's more than 90%, I would say, in the U.S. So I think we'll continue on doing so. One last thing I would like to talk about, which is what is it exactly that we want to do in PIF as an investment powerhouse, and that's one of the things that we mentioned in the Vision 2030.
Yep.
Is we're now endorsing the future investment initiatives, and we're going to have in Riyadh actually next month, and the 24th, 26th, the future investment initiatives, and it's going to be discussing a lot of the initiatives and the future trends, like what I mentioned earlier, the Internet of Things, the next generation cities, which is something that we would like to do and we would like to have, and life science and stuff like that.
Very good. Thank you, Yasir. Last question to you, Lloyd. So, I think that not only the two of us, but also everyone in this room looks at Vision 2030, looks at the kingdom, wants it to succeed. Mm-hmm. But when you go to the United States as a whole and you ask people what they think about Saudi Arabia, you frequently get a very different perspective. If you were advising both Yasir as well as the government right now in Saudi Arabia what they need to do to improve simply the marketing, how they should be engaging with the Americans to try to move that needle, given the opportunity. What would you say?
We saw that at the end of we saw that a year ago when we had the legislation on the sovereign immunity lawsuit, and that how JASDA, how poorly Saudi Arabia was positioned, because it wasn't just a question of whose side were you on. There was a lot of kind of constitutional and precedential reasons why you didn't want to do that. Mostly that would inure to the disadvantage of the United States. We like sovereign immunity when we operate around the world.
And yet it was almost unanimous.
And it was almost
clear
unanimous
you were empowering
because the
lawyers. Who
reputation
wants
was so
to do
bad.
that? Yeah.
I think this is going to be a real challenge for Saudi Arabia, and I think they have to get on it, and you have to walk the corridors of Congress, and you have to make yourself known. I'd say one of the consequences of the restructuring of the oil business, in other words, the fall off in demand because of the alternatives that are being found for oil and the finding oil everywhere, the presence of more supply and creating things, you have a situation where North America is basically energy sufficient. You know, we may import some oil, we may have more natural gas, and some of it is from Canada and Mexico, but basically the continent is not an importer. In fact, we're going to be an exporter. And if you want to think about sometimes the implications of that going forward, just as a thought experiment, think about the implications of what would have been. How would the history of the last 50 years been written differently of the United States' relationship with the Middle East if the United States wasn't an importer of oil from the Middle East? Which wars would we not have gone to? Which regimes would we not have supported? You know, et cetera, et cetera. And if you see that history would have been different, well, the next period of time may be different than the set of expectations that have been grown up. I think the affection that these countries have for each other, which is deep and real and historically based, has to really, really be nurtured, and you can't rely on it being a mutual economic interest premised on a supplier, the biggest supplier and the biggest user of carbon energy from the region. So I think that's going to be that has to be a very, very important project, or the reason you want to make sure that the kind of infection and interest shown by Trump wasn't the last page of an old chapter, but rather the new page of a new chapter, and you're going to have to really consider the geopolitical consequences of the U.S. North America being self-sufficient.
Very important comment for us to wrap up on. Lloyd, Blankfein, Yasir, bin Othman, Al-Rumayyan, please, if you would join me in thanking.
Thank you.